pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Looks like everyone's here except Brad. All the voting members here. First item of business is the approval of the minutes of our last meeting. Assume you had a chance to look those over.
Since I was here, I'll make a motion that we approve these minutes.
Okay, Mike's made a motion. Okay, Bill has seconded that. All in favor of approving the minutes as presented, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
New business, Jeremy.
Yes, you have to approve the excess assessed value letter. Every year we have to send this letter to all the taxing agencies that are within our jurisdiction, claiming whether or not we are to pass through any TIF. As I have recommended in the past and in your recent financial report, my recommendation is to not pass any excess valuation through. And if you so choose to approve this letter, it will be sent out to all the taxing agencies.
Make a motion to approve it as presented.
Okay, Joe's made a motion. Approved.
I'll second it.
Okay, Jack, second. All in favor of approving the excess assessed value letter, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Lease agreement for Warsaw County.
As you're aware, we've purchased the Warsaw Chemical Properties. This does two things. It terminates their use of the south building, the south property, and then enters into a 6-month lease on the north portion of the property. The lease rate is $1,000, and they are to pay for continuing maintenance on the building and any utility costs as part of that agreement. And we will revisit this again in 6 months as they continue to relocate their business.
How many people you had to have in that area of the building?
I think mostly it's gonna be warehousing, so I think mostly what's gonna be left there is just warehousing. Most of their operations been moved to the new facility. So it'll just be, they have some other property that they're working on, but it isn't quite ready to move into yet.
Is that gonna hold up any borrower?
Well, I do have a proposal that I'm working through that I will bring to you at some point in time. That may or may not do something on the north side, but that's something you as a commission will have to look at. I'm not ready to bring that yet, but it has been submitted to me. I'm reviewing it. There's some conversations I'll have, and then at some point I will bring it forward to you guys. That may change what happens to the north side.
So this extension is a single extension for 6 months.
As it stands right now, yes.
There's no renewal or anything like that.
It's not an automatic renewal.
Yep. All right.
So it expires at midnight on October 31st, 2026.
Are they doing it in progress and what's they're going into, the idea?
They're doing well. I think they had some struggles in the beginning, but I think they've been able to work through them, and they progressed quickly to exit the south building, which was most of where the warehousing was at. Operations have moved into the new facility, so now I think they just need some storage space for the short term.
Hopefully it's a win-win.
Yeah.
For everybody, it should be a win. Any other questions about the lease agreement? Temporary 6-month. No, entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Okay, Bill favor of approving the 6-month lease agreement, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Economic Development Agreement for Millworks. And then
Yeah, so you have before you amendment to the original economic development agreement with Millworks. The amendment does a couple of things. The amendment increases the original dollar amount that was approved. Originally, we had an agreement for $1 million of city funds. This is increasing that to, or requesting to increase that to 1.344343. And the increase has to do with the commercial space. We've been working with a tenant to occupy that commercial space. And rather than entering into multiple agreements with different entities, it made more sense to just deal with Millworks, AP Anderson. So this would white box that space, basically build out that space to the tenant's needs, so that they can come in and set up their equipment and open up their operation. At the same time that we're doing this, it makes available the $1 million to go towards the project. So the $1 million was for the streetscape. We are working on that design. Once we have the approved design from AP, we will be able to release those funds to them. Because at this point, they will be constructing those improvements as part of their project. Rather than us having to enter into another agreement with a contractor and match up with their work, they will enter into an agreement with the contractor to do that, and they can schedule it as they're coming off of their project and get the necessary pavement and sidewalk work done so it can work smoothly throughout the project.
Just to make sure I understand, the 340,343 that this is gonna increase, put it in your terms, the improvements are creating a white box for any retail to come into?
Technically, yes.
Okay.
Uh,
In other words, if this group would back out those improvements,
Well, they will not be getting this money until the signed lease. So they understand that there has to be a lease signed with the tenant, at which point we would issue the money to them for the work to be completed.
what kind of lease would it be? How many years?
I think it's 10 years. I haven't seen the lease yet, so I don't know. That's the part I'm still working on.
Sorry, but
No, that's fine.
if they bail for 10 years, is there any clawback on these improvements?
No, and I'm not sure it would be of value because the work would already be done. So it'd make it easier for them to release the space. So it's an incentive on both parts. It's an incentive on the company that wants to go into it, because it reduces their upfront cost to occupy the space. But it's also a long-term incentive because it makes the space more easily to lease, because the cost, they will have reduced that lease rate down to a rate that'll be more appealing. And that was kind of the disconnect between AP Anderson and the proposed tenant, was that the lease rate was fine if the space, in their mind, if the space met a certain standard. And that's what we're attempting to do, is make the space meet a certain standard.
But if someone else, for whatever reason, they would go out and someone else would come in, these improvements would certainly relate to another business coming in.
That's what I'm saying. So I don't know that there'd be a reason to claw it back, because
Yeah, that
it would
makes
make it
sense.
more marketable
Yeah.
in the future.
That makes sense, and that was what I was getting at.
Yeah.
The improvements aren't totally
They can't take them.
company specific.
They are not, and that's part of the reason why I wanted to separate the two. This company wanted an incentive, and I did not want to specifically incentivize them, so I incentivized the project,
Space,
the space, yeah.
right, and that makes sense, I get it, thank you.
So it's no equipment, it's no nothing, it's all internal, it's HVAC, electrical, plumbing, the wall finishing, flooring, that's what the improvement. All of those things that typically a tenant would come in and do, they didn't want, it's not that they didn't want to do, the cost for the rent versus what they were willing to pay didn't match up, so we're coming in to match that so that we can, get the tenant in there.
Is that the, cement block portion of the project that I see
Yes,
when I go by? How many square feet is that?
like 2,500 square
Okay,
feet.
and it looks like 2 levels.
Yeah, there'll be a rooftop, balcony. So there'll be a rooftop where you can go out on the patio and eat.
Did the city attorney draw this amendment up, or did outside counsel?
Our legal counsel with, Barnes and Thornburg did, yeah.
So when the lease is let, the tenant, and I don't know who it is, they will pay lease or rent to the developer?
Yes,
Okay. And all that goes to the developer?
yes.
Okay. For 10 years?
Yeah, however long they lease the space, yeah.
So this doesn't really specify the terms, this just sets the total amount of the economic development incentive.
That's correct, yeah. Yeah, it does not get into the lease terms. If they sign a lease with the tenant, they will be eligible to receive the additional funding.
How are we protected? Is that development agreement involve us and the developer with the new tenant? Or is it just between the developer and the tenant?
The lease is between the developer and the tenant. This agreement is between us and the developer. So we have no tie to the tenant.
But you're saying that your restriction on this with the tenant is that they sign an agreement, then they get the development funds to do the
Yeah.
improvements. So where is that stated? Is that actually in this?
It should be. I don't see it in here, so we can, there's two ways we can do it. On the disbursement, because the city will disperse the city funds to developer upon request by development on a form acceptable to the city. We cannot disperse the funds on that form unless they have a lease agreement. Or I can go back to them and rewrite this.
I'm not believing.
No, I'm,
If you feel like we're covered by that type of arrangement, I'm okay with that. I just didn't see where there was any.
yeah, I don't see it in here either. It should have been in here. I could go either way. I mean, it should be in there. I didn't catch that, but, we're not gonna release the funds until we have a lease agreement. They're aware of that. They're not gonna actually build it until they have a signed lease agreement, because obviously that's money out of their pocket.
Could we go ahead and just do this today, and then would it be possible to bring an amendment back to the amendment?
I think we could approve it subject to language being inserted that, specifically states that that portion is for the leased space, and a lease has to be executed before it could be distributed. So in our motion, if we just make that motion to, so you'd be approving it subject to that language being adjusted, then I can adjust that Yeah, I definitely would feel better if the language was in there,
All right,
because that's the intent.
yeah, absolutely. I guess when I was talking about clawback, I wasn't necessarily looking at clawing back the cost, because I was at maybe, and maybe this isn't what you do, but create like a minimum occupancy requirement for, maybe not participate in the cost of improvement, like at least, I don't know.
Well, yes, I mean, the project, this is kind of a small piece of the project, I mean,
Yeah.
I think they're gonna have close to $750,000 outfitting the space. So it's not like they're not making an investment.
Yeah.
It's just, it was the lease rate versus the cost of improvements. So if they didn't have some contribution, then it was gonna cost well over $1 million to outfit the space. They're still gonna have $750,000 in outfitting the space on top of the improvements that are being done by us,
And you're talking about the retail space
the retail space.
specifically?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, I understand the incentive, I understand what you're trying to do, I think cleaning up the language will help, so I'm fine. So with that amendment to, however you wanna state it, that we clean that up, and then you'll have us sign it, or you would approve this subject to that language.
Yeah, I would approve it subject to language indicating that the additional 343 has a approved or a signed lease. That would make it, at that point, we could distribute those funds to the project,
Once it's complete.
once it's completed, yeah.
Do you all feel that we should create a restriction that it be a 5-year lease or a 10-year lease, or should we just leave it a signed lease? I mean, I'm just looking out for the investment the city's gonna make in the project. You know, I mean, somebody came in and set up and quickly decided this wasn't gonna work and failed. The good news is those improvements will be available and usable for someone else coming in, so I get that, I just don't know if we wanna take it any further and request a minimum amount of the lease, and if
Well,
not.
if you have a 5-year lease, I think a 5-year lease would be reasonable. I mean, most bank loans are for commercial loans are 5-year, correct? And they say they don't live up to the 5 years, then what?
Well, I mean, that was my question on clawback, but as Jeremy stated, the project will have been completed, the improvements are there, and they will carry on to the next tenant, so, you know, I guess you're trying to incentivize the
Yeah,
individual to stay, but I don't know how you would do that other than.
but we also wanna be wise with our money and
Sure.
see a return.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't think of 5
I
years.
didn't get that. Did you try again?
Sorry.
That's what we're trying. That's never happened before.
George, what do you think? You got a good handle on these things.
Well,
And we got a banker right here too.
well, we have a banker here too. Yeah, I think,
And Councilman,
and the president of the city council, yeah, I think however we can strengthen it. The language is probably good, I'm sure.
We can make it subject to a 5-year lease, but I'm not sure there's a whole lot of value in it, because the agreement is with the developer, not the leasee. If it was with the leasee, then we could
got it.
prorate the money on a 5-year basis. But
No, I understand what you're saying. All right, I mean, if it doesn't seem practical, then report.
let me see what I'll go back to with this language change, and I will see. They said that the lease is ready, so it's kinda like, well, let's get the lease done so that we can
Yeah.
move on, but, I'll see what the lease terms are, and if I feel yes, we're investing money in the space, but they're also investing $750,000 in the space, so. They've got.
They don't want it to sit empty either.
They don't want it to sit empty, they don't wanna have to pull the stuff out in 3 years or because it failed, right? So, I mean, they have an incentive to make sure it works as well, so. And I'm sure they don't wanna sign a lease that would leave them renegotiating within 2 or 3 years. So I imagine it's at least 5 years, if not longer, but I will check on that.
But you're at, what we're putting money into is more infrastructure.
Yeah, it's not going away.
It would come back in, so that would be a plus, it's not.
It's not furniture and fixtures.
No.
Okay.
It's improvements in the.
In the space, everything we're doing is improvements in the space. It's the HVAC, the electrical, the plumbing, the grease traps, the interior walls, the flooring, it's all, the electrical, it's all of that. It doesn't have anything to do with the space, the equipment, counters, anything that they're doing is all on them.
Well, I think you could just make it contingent on a lease, on an acceptable lease, and leave it at that, then you have the ability to interpret it.
Okay.
Understanding that that's also very important to the developer, that it be a good lease.
Yeah, and this is not their first go-around, so I mean, but I imagine both of them have a reasonable amount of experience. I know the business that's looking at it, this is not their first place, so, they have a couple and they're working on a couple other deals, so, I believe they're well financially backed as well, so, I don't have that concern either, so.
All right, so I make a motion to approve the amendment subject to insertion of the language, that requires an acceptable lease to be signed before the money is dispersed.
Yep.
Motion by Joe. Okay, Bill has seconded that. All in favor of the motion as presented?
Aye.
Signify by saying aye. Those against say nay. So this
Who will
passes.
approve that lease? Jeremy, will it come back to us, or will that be you?
I can share the lease to you one by our copy of it. I mean, they're supposed to be getting me the lease for a couple of reasons, but one is this agreement, the other is, as part of this agreement, we are trying to use some ORI experience funds for this project, so. So at the same time, I have a grant application in with them, so our total funds, if approved, may be less than the $340,000, just if we get some additional grant. There's a grant request into ORI for $75,000 to contribute to this project, so if we get that grant money, that will come off the 340, so we won't necessarily be paying all of the 340. If we don't get the grant money, then we would be paying all of that 340.
Thanks.
Agreement with Retail Strategies Consultants.
So we've previously had a 3-year agreement with them. It expired like a month ago, or in this last week or so. They have continued to act on our behalf for marketing Warsaw to commercial businesses. And I have looked at a couple of other options. We have a lot of things going on right now. It didn't make a lot of sense to try to switch midstream at this point. But I also wasn't willing to commit to them for 3 more years, so what I've suggested to them is that we would extend the agreement for an additional year, give them a chance to improve upon what they've done. Not to say that they haven't done, I mean, I continually get quarterly reports, I know who they're marketing to, I know the interest that's out there. We've got a couple of other projects that we're working on as regards to them. So it makes sense to continue this relationship for another year. do strongly believe it's in our best interest to continue to have a marketing firm that is marketing Warsaw, to get interest from these different commercial entities. But there has to be some value there too, and they're aware of that. We've had this conversation. And I don't think it's a matter of them not doing what they're saying they're doing. I think some of it kind of falls on us to create the spaces that are available for them to go in, and that's some of the things that we're working on this year.
Looks like we can terminate the agreement anytime, right?
Yep.
And the fee be prorated.
And I like the idea of the 1-year extension. Kind of puts them on notice.
Yes, they are on notice. We had a very upfront, forward conversation about what I expect.
Results.
Results, yeah. And I don't wanna come off as saying, oh, they haven't done anything. I mean, some of it is, there's a lot of interest, but some of it is finding the right spaces and creating the right spaces. I think we've tried to do some of that. We struggled with some of this property north of the Coles development. I'm trying to figure out how we get that in the hands of someone to develop. And so that is a big thing that they're gonna be working on marketing. I've got 2 appraisals in the works. I'm going to try to negotiate with Thompson and Thrift. The city may attempt to purchase that remaining acres, to then package it. So they are selling they're actively out there selling that acreage to potential developers. So hopefully maybe we can put some kind of development together yet this year, that would trigger some of these interested parties, to have a space to move into.
Is that primarily the area which you're looking to them for assistance?
Yeah, there's a couple of others as well. But yeah, that's one of the most prominent properties that is available. There's another 9 acres on the other side that I'm trying to help that property owner with, but we've got to get LeGrand in on the conversation, because LeGrand's entrance is at that traffic signal, and in order for that acreage to be developed, everybody wants access to that traffic signal, which makes sense from a safety standpoint as well. Unfortunately, it's in their control, not the states or the city, so trying to work with them, trying to get someone from them to communicate with us so there's other properties, but that's the primary
It could
property.
include redevelopment or properties that, like you said, came available that met the needs of certain retailers and or restaurants.
And they have been marketing some of those as well, like the old Hardee's, the coffee shop that's going in there. They are marketing, but we haven't had any big hits, right? Like, I don't know how many coffee shops we need, apparently a lot. But that's not exactly high on my list, right? Yeah. So we've talked a lot about some big retail. We've talked a lot about some big restaurants that are high on our list. They know what we want to see.
Jeremy, what did we spend for the first 3 years? I should remember.
It's the same, I think all 3 years are 45.
I think so.
Yeah, so it's the rate hasn't changed
It was 45 per year.
for a year.
Got it.
They go to all the retail conferences. They were just out in Las Vegas, and they have booths and set up meetings with all the corporations to meet on our behalf. I direct them a little bit of who we're targeting, who we'd like to target. So they try to set up those meetings with those retailers. And then they report back to us.
You're happy with the reports they get back to you, send you?
Yes, I mean, in general, I mean, I'd like for some of the bigger players to be interested, right, but I can't make them interested.
Right.
And that's kind of their job, trying to sell us, and, I mean, we have dozens of commercial entities that are interested. I mean, it's a matter of trying to match them with a site that kind of meets their needs. And some of that comes down to us creating primarily going after those commercial and retail opportunities we want to see, like the Chick-fil-A, the Olive Gardens, the Target, or Burlington Coat Factory, like all of those things. We're sending a list of here's things that we want to see targeted, like Hobby Lobby was one of those. And they are actively setting meetings with those corporations to discuss Warsaw as an opportunity.
Do they call on, instead of just single businesses like what you just mentioned, do they call on development companies that might come in and take over, for example, that property that Thompson owns, and then they do their own developing with multiple
Yes.
businesses and stores?
Yes.
That would, to me, would be a home run.
All of the above. I mean, they hit all of it.
Okay.
They have two different potential developers, that have gotten their REITs, who have gotten, cash infusion. I mean, I don't know how, some of you probably know how a REIT works, right? Investors dump money in, you build products, they get a return, i.e. on the investment that they make. Well, these are always happening. And there are some big REITs that have had hundreds of millions of dollars dumped into them. It's a matter of getting your property in front of them with a development that results in profitability, right? So that's what they bring to the table. There's a couple of those that I'm hoping to market the Thompson and Thrift property to, but at the same time, I've gotta get it. I've gotta get it under our control.
Yeah.
Or at least, at the same time, we're bringing a developer in, try to control the property so that we can put the two projects together. So it's a very simplistic way of trying to explain it. It's gonna be a lot more complicated than that, but that's in essence what we're trying to do.
We've had them for 3 years, right? What wins have we gotten with them? Can you?
They had conversations with Hobby Lobby. We tried to match. We worked on another development, with some of those players. That was the Hobby Lobby battle we had a few years back. It's just the development did not make financial sense. And that's why we shifted to get Hobby Lobby into the marketplace. It was a value play, right? Like, yes, we want these people, but at what cost? That value play, in my opinion, wasn't there. So we continue to work with them and Hobby Lobby. Some of the coffee, like, the Hortons and some of those coffee shops have been in communication with them. They've got a list of 3 or 4 other people that they're have conversations with that I think of some projects are gonna pop up. So, I mean, there's been some things out there. It's just not been the big players that we're talking about.
But they might help at least sell those on.
Oh, they absolutely have, and a lot of the conversations we've had have hinged on those conversations that they have with those retailers bringing to the table. It's not a black and white thing, unfortunately, right? It's not like, oh, I brought this specific here at this location, because typically it involves 2 or 3 other people, and it'll be a property owner, potential developer, like with the marketplace, it's the developer of the marketplace. At the same time, we were having conversations with Hobby Lobby, and this other developer. So there's a lot that goes on as we try to, as they say, make soup. Yeah.
I assume that's why you're suggesting a year and not necessarily going for the full 3 years.
Yeah, so the conversation we've had was, I'm not overly impressed. I'm not saying that they haven't been out there beating the pavement, but I'm also not overly impressed with our return. However, there are some big potential projects that I think we can work on this year. And it wouldn't make sense, especially with the Las Vegas convention happening when it happened, for us to switch at this point. If we were going to switch, do think, whether it's them or somebody else, I think it's important for us to have our face out in front of these commercial opportunities.
Absolutely.
So they handle all the recruitment visits, I mean,
Yes,
they go to the show.
they go to the
Yeah.
show on behalf of us.
Do
They will go to the show.
encourage that we send someone from ED or mayor or whoever to, if there's a big project?
They do, I mean, I shouldn't say they encourage, they ask me if I wanna go to Chicago or Las Vegas. I don't know, maybe if we get control of the Thompson and Thrift property and we can't find a developer, maybe that makes sense. But honestly, they have the relationships, they have the business knowledge, right? I'm just gonna be there spending city money in Las Vegas, like what am I gonna do? I don't have the relationships they have with these retailers, I don't have the relationships they have with these developers. Their job is to bring them to the table so that I can negotiate with them. It doesn't do me a whole lot of good to go spend a week in Las Vegas and spend taxpayers' money, because I don't know them. It's better to me if you have them bringing them to us so that we can negotiate. That's my personal.
Maybe as president and vice president.
Yeah, you can
I
push
should-
back.
There is merit.
I think there's value to having a representative from the community there under the right circumstance. And if there's maybe a potential suitor or two that we are very interested in, have the means, capacity to accommodate them, I think someone should be out there. But, and maybe not you.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not your cup of tea to do that, but mayors like to talk.
Jeff can do it.
Another compliment, thanks, Joe.
Yeah, I get it, I understand that perspective, and I'm not, I mean, I would rather them have the conversation with them and then bring them here so that I can have a conversation in Warsaw.
I'll give you an example. When I went out to the plug and play, when they were, the announcement was essentially being made, I did not have any impact on that announcement. But I think knowing that the community supported that announcement made them very anxious to get here and get the project underway. And there were probably still some things that needed to be negotiated, like where they were gonna be. So I don't think it hurts. I think he's the right person at the right time.
I think if I had the acreage, if we had the Thompson and Thrift acreage and maybe some other
Yeah.
acreage, I think it would make sense. Because then I'd be specifically out there saying, this is the property, here's how we can develop it. I don't know that it makes a lot of sense for me to just go out there and meet the guy who runs
Right, right, yeah.
Target, because the guy who runs Target he don't care about me, right? Like, but what he does care about is the relationships that he has with these developers and the marketers, because they're the ones that are putting the places and the spaces in front of them, and they do that on a regular basis.
Yeah.
And what he does care about too, Jeremy, is finding a community that's a good fit for his business where he can make money.
Yeah.
And if you, do we send any kind of, material?
Yes,
to
they
them?
prepare all that material.
Like handouts or, stuff from KCO or the chamber, they have that stuff
They
with them?
prepare all the marketing material, they're basically marketing Warsaw, so they have all the marketing material, they have potential location, potential spaces that are available. I mean, in essence, they are marketing all of Warsaw.
Okay.
They know all the spaces that are available, we've had many conversations about Thompson Thrift Property, we've had many conversations about spaces available in the various, strip centers. They target those areas, they target the spaces that are available with people that they feel that kind of space works well for them, because they have all those relationships and they know where they go, they know what they wanna see, the square footage.
Jeremy, I think your early comments about narrowing this down to 1 year and giving them, kind of putting them on notice that, you know, we'd like to see some results.
Yeah.
Is probably, again, given the timing of the show, makes perfect sense. So, I mean, I agree with what you're trying to do here.
I do too. And Mark,
It's not
I
easy.
I had some other conversations with some firms in November, and early January. They didn't sell me either. So I was kind of like, they weren't as aggressive as I thought they might be,
Yeah.
which is why we're back to where I'm at right now, which is they have the knowledge, they have a better relationship. And I wasn't sold from anybody else. Now, that doesn't mean I won't hit it up again in October, November to see if there's a better response, but I really just no one came out of the woodwork and just said, yeah, we really want this opportunity and here's what we think we can do differently. Which is why we're here right now with this contract.
And I hate to bring this up, kind of a sore subject, if you will, but I know marketing for a grocery store was important when we first did this. You know,
Yeah.
we obviously had the facility to market, but it, as we found out, wasn't ideal to bring someone new in.
Yeah, I mean, the market for grocery stores is very competitive. They hit every grocery store in North America.
Do you feel
And
that
getting
we
traction.
could still be considered a home for a new grocery store, given property available here? And I know there, I mean, it would probably new construction. Will that be part of their charge, or are they gonna focus more on the development of available lots?
I don't see a new grocery store coming into this market.
The big players are already here, right?
Yeah.
Then you
So,
have Martin's.
I mean, the answer is no, I don't. Now, does that necessarily mean one of the specialties couldn't come? I think there's probably space for them, but, one of the things I've learned through this process is some of those companies would rather spend the first 5 years building 20 of them in Indianapolis before they ever come outside of Indianapolis.
Right.
And so some of the new retailers you see, you're like, oh, can we talk to them? And the conversations we have with them is, yeah, well, we'd love to look at that, but I've got 36 of them I gotta put in Indianapolis before I even come talk to you. So they would rather build 36 in Indianapolis before they'll build one outside Indianapolis.
So they're dealing primarily with national or
Yes,
regional players.
yes,
Is that accurate?
yes. Yeah, these are very national. And obviously the national landscape is broken up into regions. Like we have Kroger,
And Meyer.
down south they have Publix. Like there's regions, like we're not likely to get them to come up and compete with Kroger, just like Kroger isn't likely to go down there and compete with them. Even though they marketed it to all of them. But there's those, or Piggly Wiggly, whatever you want, there's regional grocery chains, and gas station chains. Although I think some of those are starting to branch out. But, yes, they market it to all of them.
Well, one thing for sure is we're never going to have success attracting anybody if we're not out there on the mound pitching.
I 100%
And we can't do it
agree.
ourselves.
Cannot.
This is the best, most cost-effective way to do it, I think. We're 3 years in with them. I'm sure you have a pretty good understanding with them at this point.
I know more about it now than I did 3 years ago.
I would say give it another year and see how it goes.
That was my
We
conversation.
can't afford not to.
Yeah, that was my conversation with them. I didn't want us to not be represented in Las Vegas. And I didn't want us not to be out marketing a space that I'm getting appraisals on. So at the same time I'm doing all this, if I'm not actively marketing Warsaw, then what am I doing it for?
And they allow the termination clause, so it's almost a month, and after 6 months,
Yeah, we can end it.
it's not 45, it may be 23, so.
Well, the payment's a lump sum payment, but
Yeah.
point being is, come October, if we're not happy, we can just end it.
I think it's a very reasonable approach. I make the motion to approve the agreement as presented, and I appreciate the discussion.
Okay, Joe,
I'll second that.
Michael's seconded that. All in favor of approving the agreement, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Well, we have a few claims. We've got NIPSCO 7169, Indiana American Water 11185, both of the Marsh property, Costas County Treasurer, 5,229.85 for the Bowman Center parcel, and these are taxes, and then 5,677.32 for the bulk lot. Anderson Bolander for the Festival Street project, 14,460. Anderson Bolander for the Gateway Sculpture Play Park, that's for the park downtown, 7,500. American Structure Point, 38,628.22 for Anchorage Road, this is the construction inspection part of the contract. And then Barnes and Thornburg, 7,751 for legal services for scooters, millworks, the VA clinic, and Warsaw Chemical. We had 2 add-ons. These are actually, I think, reinvestments in bond funds, so there's $500,000 and $124,400 that were reinvested as part of our bond.
That building is going up quick.
Yes.
Well, there's tenants in down at Union Station too.
Yes. Yeah. I had a pretty good conversation with them, but yeah, it sounded like they had 6 that already moved in, I think like another 22 that were, scheduled to move in, so yeah, they're moving along.
They, indicated any interest in their retail space.
Yes. I've had some conversations with him about that. I don't know at this point how far along they are, but he has had some conversations, yes.
Good. It looks nice, it looks very nice.
Yeah, it looks sharp.
Good job. I make a motion to approve the claims as presented.
Joe's made a motion to approve the claims.
Second.
Jack has seconded that. All in favor of approving the claims as presented, signify by saying aye. Next meeting is Astor.
So our next meeting is June 1st. I know we typically have another day scheduled. Unfortunately, apparently this place is being occupied.